What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Rangers Talk, episode 14. Unfortunately, Nico and Nick could not join us today, so we got probably the best guy you could get as a fill-in for the two co-hosts here. We got Statboy Steven join the show. Happy late birthday as well to you, Steven. Thank you so much for filling in for us.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's my 30th birthday, so I prefer not to talk about it. I feel old. Um, Same age as Rick Nash. So, yeah, but no, doing really well. Rangers won tonight. Only saw the first period because I had to go out for birthday drinks this evening. But no, it's always fun being a Rangers fan.
Yeah, always is. And that stinks that with the week worth of losses here and the mountain of them, you were only able to catch one period. But we're going to talk about as many of these games as we could here. We're going to talk about all four of them that occurred during it. So it stings too, because all of us were saying that last week that we wanted them to go 3-1 during this stretch. That certainly did not happen, as they fell to the Columbus Blue Jackets, fell to the Colorado Avalanche, the New York Islanders, and they beat the Dallas Stars. So, reverse of what we hoped here. But I'm pretty satisfied with the win against Dallas, which we will talk about here. But first, let's start off with some of the bad here. We'll talk about the Columbus game first, as unfortunately, it would be it would be the opposite of the Rangers if they didn't give a goalie their first NHL career win. So congratulations to Tarasov on his first NHL win in this one. But this is a game that didn't have a whole lot of good, Steven, did it?
I mean, as a Blue Jackets fan, you'll love this game. But yeah, Tarasov getting his first NHL win. What else is new? I mean, ain't that the most Rangers thing to do? To give a goalie his first NHL win at the Garden. But look, the Rangers looked off in this game against the Blue Jackets. They scored one goal, and there was a 5-on-3 power play, and it was an unassisted goal by Panarin. And what that tells me is that the power play, even though you get a goal, the power play does not work. And the stat I'm going to mention now is going to carry over into the next three games. But the first four games of the season, the Rangers were 5 for 14 on the power play. Their next four games, they were 1 for 15. And that's all you need to know. When the Rangers power play goes cold, they struggle to get a win because at even strength, and like people that follow me on Twitter, people that have been part of my Twitter spaces over the last 12 months know this because it's been discussed at length. But the Rangers are really bad 5-on-5. And aside from like a 3-month stretch after the trade deadline when they acquired Tyler Mott and Frank Vetrano and Andrew Copp and Justin Braun, they have not been a good team 5-on-5. And they have to somehow fix this because you cannot be a contender if you struggle to score in a setting that is essentially 85% of the game.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah, summed it up perfectly. And you saw the lack of 5-on-5 effort from the Rangers in this one. You had the Panarin power play goal. That's really about it. Unfortunately, as well, you had Phil Petel get hurt in this game, which I think also played a role in the fact that the Rangers did not produce enough offensively, which it stings that he got hurt, but I'm sorry, the top six had to step up that game, and they certainly did not. And Yaroslav Halak definitely didn't have the best game either, which I found it interesting that he ended up starting that game, because I thought with the reason they may have had him starting that game is they would have went to Igor in the back-to-back, which didn't end up being the case. So I found it a little head-scratching that Halak ended up starting this game since they didn't go with Igor on the back-to-back.
so let me interrupt here quickly. The Columbus game was not part of a back-to-back though.
No, so what I'm saying is I thought they were going to put Igor in for the back-to-back coming up against the Avalanche and the Islanders, given the
Yeah,
fact
but
that they
but
set him.
so even if you have that back-to-back, you can still play Shesterkin against Columbus. That's one of the complaints I have.
Yep.
You play, let's say you play 20 back-to-backs over the course of the season. That will take 20 games away from your starting goalie. you're only like 3 weeks into the season. Do you really want to rest your starting goalie already in October? I just don't understand. But look, we can complain about the goaltending all we want. In a game where you only score one goal, the goalie is not the issue.
Yep.
So
Especially with the lack of 5-on-5 effort. As you mentioned, yeah, it was just brutal. And I thought Truba and Miller had one of their worst games as a pair. Same with Jones and Schneider. All of them combined for probably what a minus. They were a minus 10, pretty much
yeah.
combined. So
Mhm.
yeah, an awful game from all of them. But that's really all we have to mention with the Columbus game. I want to put that one in the back because we'll talk about the Avalanche game, which was a little better. There were some positive signs here, and the first period was just an absolute nightmare. And I mean, you had the penalty that wasn't with Alexi Lafreniere at the end of the first, and I feel like we need to take a minute to talk about that because why are we still getting calls like this wrong? I
See,
don't
okay,
understand.
so I want to chime in here for a second, if you don't mind. And I don't blame the referees here because the referees are following the rules. My problem is with the NHL, who put a rule in place where you cannot overturn a 2 minute high sticking call, but you can overturn a 4 minute high sticking call. To me, that is ridiculous. If you can review a high sticking call in general, then it should apply to all high sticking calls. I know that some calls cannot be reviewed because it's like in the NFL, pass interference is not reviewable because pass interference is a judgment call. We're not talking about a player going out of bounds that can be clearly determined as did it happen, yes or no. And the same thing is true for like an interference call in hockey or even a tripping call. You're talking about a tripping call, and you go, well, did the guy really trip him, or was his foot there and the other player skate into it? But when it comes to the high sticking, if it's not the other team's stick, you should be able to call that back. And look, like I said, I don't blame the referees, and the referees are following the rules. The NHL needs to step in here because this was ridiculous. And I'm telling you, I'm a huge Rangers fan, and I would like to watch every game of the season. But if the Colorado Avalanche scored on that power play, I would have turned off my laptop and would have gone to bed.
Yep.
For me, games start at midnight. So if I see something like this happening at 1 a.m., I'm not going to deal with that shit. I'm just going to go straight to bed. I'm glad it didn't happen. I got to watch the Rangers come back from being down 1-0, from being down 2-1. The Rangers showed great resilience in this game. And all things considered, losing in a shootout to the reigning Stanley Cup champions, a team that you lost at home to 8-3 a year ago. When your goalie gives up a once in a career type mistake, I'll take that. I'll take that result. Did I want the win? Of course. But all things considered, taking it to overtime against this team, that's a win.
Yeah, completely agree there that they showed resilience and that you take the result that you got. Just to go back to what you were talking about with the NHL, yeah, absolutely. This was definitely not on the refs. The NHL does need to fix this, and it's mind blowing to think that something like this could happen in a playoff game or a Stanley Cup game, and it's like, oh well, these are the rules, and it's amazing that you can't have it change, and it feels like it's not going to be a thing that is changed unless it does happen in the Stanley Cup or in the playoffs. So
Mm.
that's what sucks about it as well. It's going to take a crucial game decision goal for this to change. But with this game, yeah, and then you did have Igor who misplayed the puck there on the Logan O'Connor goal, which also it stung. It stung, but at the same time, that was another game where the power play was just not there. And if the power
Yeah.
play shows up at least once there, we're talking about a regulation win. And
Mhm.
the shootout there also stings. You probably could have won it in overtime with that power play that you got there. You should have. And I thought the refs also missed a couple calls there at the end of overtime, but Not that it would have mattered because of the fact that overtime was ending, but that's a whole different story. But yeah,
So,
like you said,
here's something I wanted to bring up, right? So over the last, I would say, 12 months, I've started some Twitter Spaces with the sole purpose of listening to people suggesting rule changes. Like, what is it? What is a rule that you would like to see change that you think benefits the NHL? Not just NHL, but hockey in general, right? One of the rule changes that came up was when a period is ending and a team is on the power play, you play out the power play like you would have injury time in a soccer game. Or, like in football and NFL, a game cannot end on a defensive penalty.
that's a great idea. That, I mean, they got to look into something like that because it
Mhm,
also just occurred to me that teams at the end of overtime could just go mayhem on
mhm.
the opposing team and just take penalties just because,
Yeah,
oh well, let's go into a shootout. It doesn't
exactly.
matter.
Who cares? Also, so two more rule changes that came up. If a player is still in the penalty box at the end of the overtime, he's not eligible for the shootout.
That's another great idea.
And the other one, and this is a bit out there, I'll admit that, but they should do the shootout before overtime starts. This way, and I'm gonna have to explain this, so hear me out. So regulation ends, you have to overtime, but before overtime starts, you do the shootout. So the shootout determines the winner if there's no winner in overtime, which means the team that loses in the shootout has more incentive to try and win the game in overtime,
Huh.
which would then kind of nullify the truce you often see in overtime in the last minute. Teams don't want to lose in the final minute 3-on-3, so they don't take any risk. They don't forecheck to get the puck. If the team has the puck, they don't try and make any risky passes. Imagine this scenario, right? Where you go into the shootout, the Carolina Hurricanes win the shootout, and then you go into overtime. The Rangers then know the only way to get that second point is to win it in overtime.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea either. I'd probably go with the first option out of them. I mean, I still think that either way, they need to just expand or extend overtime to 10 minutes. I feel like that's enough 3v3 to
Mhm.
get a game called, and we shouldn't even be resorting to shootouts. But I know people feel differently about that, and I know there's people out there that like shootouts. So you could have that opinion, but at the end of the day, I feel like that a game resorting in a shootout is not ideal. It's a skills competition at the end of the day, and like we're talking about here, you just have teams going mayhem at the end of overtime or trucing at the end, where okay, let's just go to a shootout, and it's just not fun that way. It's not, and 5 minutes is not enough.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You could extend the overtime, which I understand as well, but does that really fix anything? See, with and we're getting a little bit of topic here, but with the potential rule change of having the shootout first, you are eliminating the status quo in overtime in the final minute. You have one team that knows they want to shoot out, so all they have to do is defend here. Can you imagine a team pulling their goalie in overtime in the final minute?
That would be
With with
exciting.
the
Yeah.
with the structure right now, it's never happening, right?
Yep.
But with this proposed new rule change, imagine the Rangers with a minute to go, they're on the power play already. They make it a 6-on-4, or sorry, they make it a 5-on-3 because it was a 4-on-3 power play. They make it a 5-on-3 for the final minute. How cool would that be?
Yeah.
It makes overtime more exciting because right now overtime to me as a hockey fan in general, and I'm not even talking about the games the Rangers are involved in, but as a hockey fan in general, I kind of lost my appetite for 3-on-3 overtime because I think it's almost like all-star hockey. when players can
Agree.
skate back to their own half. I mean, it takes the whole. It takes everything that hockey is about out of the game.
Yeah, and that's what stings too, because there's just nothing I feel like that's a fair compromise here. Because either way, I feel that way about a shootout, and overtime does feel the same way too, where it's more just this is like an all-star event versus an actual game, and
Mm.
it feels like there's just no way of making this right unless
Yeah,
they
the thing
did
is,
the playoff rules, but
yeah,
obviously that would be too much.
yeah. So going into overtime with two teams that can still go for a tie, go for a shootout, doesn't give them enough to fight for. But if you do the shootout before overtime, one team has to defend, the other team has to attack. It's as if you, like in the NFL, if you have an overtime game when a team already had a field goal,
Yep.
or in overtime in general in the NFL. If you score a touchdown, the game's over. I don't know. I think the NHL can do more to make overtime more exciting. But look, the Rangers lost to the Colorado Avalanche. It happens.
Yep, and Georgiev absolutely loved it, as you guys saw the celebration that he had. So that stung a bit, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Like you mentioned, they got it to a shootout. I mean, I'll take the point, and either way, I was expecting them to lose this game either way, and the fact that they got a point out of it, I'll take it. I'll take
Yeah.
it 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10. So we will not complain there. And then we'll get to a game that I unfortunately also attended. Back-to-back losses for me at UBS Arena against the New York Islanders. A 3-0 shutout loss. And this one just felt it just stung. It just stung, this one. You gave it your
Yeah.
all. Sorokin just robbed them.
I was kind of hoping for the Rangers to take this because the Islanders are no longer coached by Barry Trotz. But I guess the Barry Trotz stamp is still very much on this team.
Yep.
Once they get a goal, there's no getting back into it for the Rangers for some reason. Yeah, just overall not a good game by the Rangers. But yeah, the Islanders, they look better than they did a year ago.
Yep.
That's
Could agree
my
with
big
that.
takeaway. I
Yeah.
still don't think they're a playoff team, though. I still think they are behind the Carolina Hurricanes, the New York Rangers, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Washington Capitals. And out of the Atlantic, I would say still the Leafs, the Panthers, the Lightning, and the other team coming out of the Atlantic, I would say either the Red Wings or the Senators. I don't see the Bruins making it. I just don't see the Islanders being a playoff team this year. But still, you lose those games you should have won. And for people that are from New York, it's probably a bigger deal. Like, look, I'm not from New York, so do we lose to the Islanders and does it matter that much to me? No.
No.
But I understand for people that are from New York, it's a big deal because of the history and the whole losing streak in the early '90s when they were bullied in school. So I get that, but the Islanders don't scare me as a team.
Nope, same. And this is one that I thought should have been a win heading into it. And to me, outside, I'm in New York, and I still find it to be. It's just a regular season game. Talk playoffs if they want to have it be a big deal. To me, I had far more concerns than it being the New York Islanders. There was a lot that I didn't like about this game. They were forcing shots at times, and there were. That's just all it was. And Sorokin definitely came up with some big saves at times too. And if Kaka scored that goal, I would have went wild there, and it stung. And their best chance outside of that was probably when Fox hit the crossbar. I believe that was in the third period. They didn't really
Yeah.
generate that many great chances.
Yeah, look, the Rangers had a chance to win, but look, you're going to lose games. You're not going to win all 82 games in a season. It happens. And the only game they play at the UBS Arena this season, you want to win that one, but I'm not too worried about this one. The losses that worry me more are the ones against the Sharks and the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, 100%. That Sharks loss, especially that one, definitely concern me. Even though the Columbus one was worse, I mean, it's just San Jose was
No, but
0-5 heading into the night
let's be
there.
real here. You play the Sharks that have lost 5 in a row. They
Yep.
haven't won a game yet. David Quinn comes into your building, your former coach, and you give him his first win as a Sharks coach. That's just a bad look, man. That's just bad.
Yeah, and it looked like he outcoached Gallant at times during that game too, which is what also sucked about it. And I heard you talking on Rangers Review with Tyler about it, how Gallant needs to be better with deploying the power play, which I completely agree. There are times where he should start out with the second unit, especially on home ice, which only on home ice. Start out with the second unit and then get the first unit out there.
Yeah, I've said this a lot over the last year. Like I started this when Gallant was just the new Rangers coach. Gallant does not take advantage of the the last change. He doesn't use the tools he has. And especially when the power play is struggling, you have to, and especially when you play at home, you get the last change. So use that advantage to create a mismatch. And I've explained this and I've talked to you about this. You put your second power play unit out there against their first PK unit. I don't care what happens in the first 30 seconds. What I care about is that after 30 seconds, their PK unit goes off and their second PK unit comes on. That's when you put out your first power play unit. And you create mismatches. And this is what Rod Brindamore does in Carolina. This is what Alexandra Burrows does in Montreal. He's the assistant coach, but he's in charge of the power play. Good teams think outside the box. And with Gerard Gallant, I don't get the feeling that he does.
Yeah, there seems to be a lack of adjustment with his coaching style. And I know that you were talking about that as well, where there's times that they look like the Globetrotters out there, where it's like, hey, have fun. And there's no set, this is how we play. And if a team's coming at us a certain way or we need to play a certain way, they just have no way of adjusting to it. And Gallant's just like, yeah, go out there and play your game.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what it feels like. Gallant is a have fun out there kind of coach, which
Yep.
works great the first year. But look, Gallant was a head coach in Columbus, Florida, and Vegas. He was fired every time midway through his third season. The first season was great. Second season, kind of disappointing. Third season, he gets canned. And I don't want that to happen to Gallant here. I want him to be here when we win a cup. But the way he's going on now, I just don't see it. Kako and Lafreniere, they each had an assist tonight. We beat the Dallas Stars 6-3, but we're not getting the most out of our top picks.
Yep.
We're not getting the most out of our top players, even. Aside from Panarin, who has, I think, 12 points in 8 games? Do we get the most out of Kreider? Do we get the most out of Zibanejad, Fox, Lindgren, even Trouba? I just don't see it right now. And that doesn't mean that I want to fire Gallant right now, but it does mean that something has to change because even though it's early, we're 10% into the season now after 9 games. Something has to change.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I talked to Nick, who joined us, about it. We talk about this all the time, how if Gallant's not going to start showing that he can make adjustments, then yeah, he's going to go. And we're starting to figure out why. Because we question personally us, why was he getting fired in these places? Because you look on paper, you look at how these teams finish, and you see, and you say to yourself, how did he get fired from these jobs? Now we're starting to see it. And I just wonder if their eyes opened a bit, seeing Trotz say the quote that he did, and after the season, maybe they explore a change, even if things don't get better as the season goes on.
Yeah, and look, I don't think Barry Trotz is going to be a Rangers coach because I think the Leafs make much more sense for him.
Agree with that.
But his comments definitely make you think. I want to coach a I want to coach an original six team. Okay. The Canadians have St. Louis. The Blackhawks have what's his name? Richardson. The Red
Yep.
Wings. Who's the Red Wings coach?
I
It
forgot
was
his
the
name.
assistant from Tampa, Derek something. I forgot his last name.
Yeah. Anyway, the Red Wings and the Bruins have like relatively new coaches too. So if you're looking into an original six team, the only teams that make sense are the Rangers and the Leafs. I don't think the Rangers are going to get rid of Gerard Gallant, but it is telling that look, the Rangers don't seem to have a plan B. Even though they won tonight, I'm very happy that they beat the Dallas Stars. 6-3. You score 6 goals, great. Julien Gauthier, a goal and an assist, by the way. But it feels like tonight's game is an anomaly and not the expectation. And that is a concern.
Yeah. Nick, was there anything that you wanted to add to that? Because I just completely agree with it.
No, I agree with it too. I mean, I joined late, but from what we've seen this, so far this season, it's just, the defense has been like really shaky, and there's seems to be like no consistency, and that's very concerning for, you know, here on out for the rest of the season. So, but yeah, I agree so far with everything you guys said.
Yeah, which now we will recap the Dallas game, which, as Steven mentioned, they ended up scoring 6 goals in, which was great. There were times where there was a lot of defensive lapses, though. I mean, that Jason Robertson goal can't happen. The one that ended up being offsides called can't happen. And there were certainly some issues. Igor looked a bit shaky as well at times, letting in some goals 5-hole. They were exposing his 5-hole quite a bit in this game. But for the most part, I was satisfied with this game. I thought it was a step in the right direction in terms of getting back to how they need to start playing. But like you mentioned, I mean, the fact that there's no plan B is scary. It is a scary thought.
Yeah, and it's just more the fact that there's doesn't seem to be improvement. I can completely understand that you have a couple of rough games, but we saw this last season, and yeah, we made it all the way to the conference final, but it wasn't until the deadline where Drury acquired 4 players that this team actually seemed to have figured it out. This season, the Rangers don't have that luxury. They don't have the cap space to make these moves.
Yeah, you
And
got 4 million, and the only guy that I've been saying that I think is going to be a cap casualty at the deadline is Ryan Reeves, and 1.7. It's not like it's a lot there, so they're in a tough spot. They're in a tough
yeah,
spot.
mhm. Yeah, and then there's also, you're looking at other contracts, but the Ryan Reeves one, let me check here actually. Does he? Yeah, I mean, it's 35 plus contract, so it's only 1 year, so it's all right. There's no move clause, so they can trade him, but yeah, the Rangers are pretty like fucked. So
Yeah,
hold on, give me a second. Give me a second.
all good. But
Also, doesn't help to have $8 million Jacob Trouba on the team. You know that doesn't help either, considering how shaky he is.
yep, that's a whole different issue to talk about there, which we'll talk about the defensive pair switch ups too when Stevie gets back. But Mike says we looked like a team that lost all its chemistry on those losses. Puck watching up the middle, clearing passes. Completely agree, and we saw it even in this game. I mean, how many times were they going behind the boards and then just throwing the puck in the middle of the ice with nobody there? It seems like they have no sense of each other right now, and they're playing with no chemistry. They're running out there like a bunch of headless chickens. And yeah, Trouba was definitely awful today. This was probably, I mean, I hate to say it's his worst game as a Ranger because we've seen bad from him, but this might have been his worst game. He was awful today. There is definitely no denying that.
Yeah, no question. Um, and it's not like this is anything new. Like it's been like this for, quite some time since he's been here. So, um, yeah, you just got to figure out like how do you make the situation with Truba any better, and I personally believe it has to. It starts with him. Does he, just want to be better, or he's just gonna sit back and just be all right with getting paid 8 million and just giving a mediocre effort night in and night out, So
I'd like for them to shelter his minutes. That's what I'd love, but it's not going to happen. But it could be interesting to see how they deploy him now with these what looked like new defensive pairs, which we'll talk about. Like I mentioned, we won a lot of bad games last season too. It just is, which yeah, like Steven said, it works in the first season with Gallant, but now you're seeing the team get exposed and teams are figuring out, yeah, this team's beatable. This team's
forget,
beatable. And Igor also bailed us out. How many times did he bail us out
yeah,
last year?
I was gonna say forget teams knowing what to expect. It was obvious that we were relying on Igor the whole year, and like Statboy Steven said, we didn't really start to figure out our play until like after the deadline. And then even in the round one against Pittsburgh, you can argue. I know you disagree, but you can argue that we should have been, you know, we should have been a first round exit, But yeah, no, I mean, something has to change, and if if it stays the same from here on out, I don't see Gallant lasting much longer with us, unfortunately. And we were originally high on him, from the start before he got hired, and it's just nuts. A year and a half later, we're having this conversation about whether or not he's the right guy for the job. So
Yeah, and if I could add something here, we went over the same thing with David Quinn, right?
yeah,
How much of David Quinn's tenure was saved by Artemi Panarin putting up career numbers?
Well,
yeah,
according to David Quinn, he's the one that made Panarin that way. So
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Specifically,
I would say
Mhm.
playing with a really good team made Panarin that way. But look, we can argue that all we want, unless he does it with another team. I don't give a shit what David Quinn says.
yep.
The thing is, Panarin was on pace for 113 points in season 1 and season 2 as a Ranger. He was on pace for 104 in his third season without David Quinn. And the thing with Gallant's Rangers last season, it wasn't just Panarin. Kreider scored 52 goals. Zibanejad had 84 points?
I think he had exactly a point per game last year. I think Mika was
Or
at
82?
81 or
Yeah.
82.
At Adam Fox, 75? Igor Shesterkin, Vezina Trophy winning season, which is great and all. But you know how difficult it is to have one player repeat a career year? Imagine having four.
That too.
Well, five. Sorry, five. Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin, Fox, and Shesterkin all hit career years last season. You know how difficult it is to have all five repeat that? It's almost impossible. So at some point, you need other players to pick up the slack. Now, who's going to pick up the slack? It's not going to be Kakko and Lafreniere because they don't get any power play time. So who's going to pick up the slack? Is the difference from Strome to Trocheck enough to offset whatever dip Kreider is going to have in his goal scoring? I don't know. But they have to think of something because eventually you're going to have to make up that difference. And I don't think a Gallant coach team has the what's the word I'm looking for here? Resilience to make that happen. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he proves me wrong. But I don't think this. I think this team is better than we were 12 months ago. I don't think this team is better than we were at the deadline last season.
Yep, could agree with that.
But unlike last season, we don't have the luxury of having $30 million in prorated cap space to make moves. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be a big challenge for Chris Drury.
Yeah, and that's where he's really going to get tested to see how good of a GM he is, how he
Mhm,
could
mhm.
get this going and navigate his way through. And
Yeah.
for a
And
guy that I was
the
sorry,
the
what were you
kind of
saying?
move that you could see is what the Lightning did with what's the guy they got from Chicago?
Hagel.
Brendan Hagel. Yeah. You pay 2 first-round picks for a guy that's signed for at least one more year at a really low cap hit that still gets you goals. Now, looking at the players this season, I mean, who would that be? Who would be that player that you target at the deadline? You would have to look at a cap hit of maybe 2.5 million,
With
right?
multiple years left.
With at least another full year left.
That's a tough pick.
I mean, that's gonna be rough because you're looking at maybe look at this. Kubalik. No, he only has 1 year left. You could look at a guy that's in his RFA years, like the only guy that I can think of off the top of my head is the guy that plays for the Canucks, Connor Garland.
Yeah, that's a guy that they could look into. And
Yeah.
thank God they got that first round pick from
Yeah.
Dallas for Niels Lundqvist, because now you
Mhm.
have more ammo here. That's something that's definitely going to be beneficial to Chris
Yeah.
Drury. And it stings though that it seems like there's a lot of spots to fill out here, because unfortunately for Kravtsov, it sucks. But I was hoping more from him, and sadly he can't even stay healthy right now. And I feel bad for the hit that he got today. He can't catch a break here, but
Mhm.
that's a guy that I feel like might get flipped at the deadline.
Yeah.
You have a
But
lot. I
even
mean, the
but
bottom
but
six is a
even
lot.
even even Connor Garland, I think his cap is like what 4.5 million.
Yeah, and they're not going to retain salary. There's no way.
No, no. For that many years, you're not gonna get salary retention, so you're gonna have to look a different way, and the other thing is when you find your target, is it going to be a team that's willing to part with that player? Like the perfect guy for the Rangers at the deadline would be Tarasenko. But if the Blues are in a playoff spot, why would they give up Tarasenko? It makes no sense, right? So it's going to be tough for Drury to figure this out. I mean, I'm glad I'm not in his shoes this year. Last year was easy, but this year it's going to be tough.
Yeah, the only other name that I could really think of a guy that would fit is Evgeny Dadonov, but he's having a slow start right now, and I don't know about him even right now. There's not a lot of great names, and for guys with multiple years left,
Yeah.
that's a challenge. And that's where I was hoping with Niels Lundqvist they were going to get an actual player to help them out this year, because
Mhm.
I felt there was still such a need in the forward group. And
Yeah, and when the first rumors were surfacing about that Nils Lundqvist trade, I started to think of maybe a player that would come back in that trade, a young player like Dellandrea. Wyatt Johnson was probably going to be too much of an expectation, but they have some really good forwards like Maverick Bork, Jacob Peterson, um, Logan Stankoven, who played with Brennan Othman for Canada at the World Juniors. But we got a first and a conditional fourth. The way I look at that trade is it's probably the most we could have gotten, but Dallas won the trades mostly because they get the most out of it. I think Niels Lundqvist is worth more than the first and the fourth we got.
I agree with that, especially with the way he's playing right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Today was not a good game for him. Let's be honest. But
well, yeah.
like for the season as a whole, I mean, the kids put up 4 points in 9 games, and this is another thing that Ranger fans need to be thinking about. If Niels Lundqvist has 55 points in 2 seasons, that fourth round pick turns into a third round pick. It may not sound like much, but yeah, it is a significant jump. So we'll see.
Yep, and it's I mean I'm trying to think off the top of my head how many holes there are for them to fill this come this trade deadline. I feel like they need to fill a spot on defense. I feel they need to fill out at least 2 forward spots. Probably
Yeah,
a middle 6 winger and then a 4th liner or 2.
Mhm.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And
It is, and it may be too much.
yeah. Yeah.
So
I
we'll
want
see. Right now, and I've said this before too, and I'm probably going towards like the end of what I'm going to say here, but the Rangers started a rebuild in 2018. The rebuild will live or die by whatever Lafreniere and Kakko do as players.
Yep.
If Lafreniere and Kakko don't hit their potential, this rebuild is fucked either way.
Yeah, it was for nothing.
And my confidence in this organization properly developing forward prospects is pretty low.
I'm right there with you. Sadly, I'm there with you. And that's where also, even if they did get a younger forward for Niels Lundqvist, what would it have mattered? What would it
I
have
mean,
mattered?
if you get them at age 21, then they've developed at least those 3 years after the draft outside of your
True.
organization. Like what they did with Fox. Fox joined the Rangers at age 21. And people go, oh, what are you talking about? We don't develop prospects. Look at Adam Fox. Yeah, Adam Fox joined us as like one of the best prospects in the world. He developed in Calgary and in Carolina, not in New York.
Yeah.
So
I can't. I mean, I'm thankful that Othman's in Flint.
Yeah.
I'm thankful.
It's also a lot easier for an NHL team to overlook developing from step 7 to 8 than to develop from step 2 to 3. There's a big difference there.
100%. Yeah. Want to get to some questions here in the chat. Let's see. Mike says, this I think was to your point about players having career years. Yeah, but can't that always be said? If your best players are putting up numbers, you will win more games than not.
So there's a big difference between Alex Ovechkin scoring 47 goals when his career high is 57 or whatever the number is, and Nicholas Backstrom putting up 80 points when his career high is 95. I'm just throwing out random numbers. I haven't checked these numbers, just to prove the point. Last season, those 5 players hit their career highs. Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, Fox, and then Shesterkin as the Vezina winning goalie. It's not that they had good seasons, it's that they had seasons that they've never had before, all in the same year, which is great when it happens. But can you really trust those 5 players to, at the very least, repeat what they've done in their best ever year so far? And we're talking about Kreider, who's 31. We're talking about Zibanejad, who's 29. We're not talking about Kakko and Lafreniere, who are 22 and 21 years old. We're talking about guys that are either in their 30s or close to their 30s. When they hit their career highs, the realistic expectation is that they're not going to get close to it. Just to prove my point here, Chris Kreider became the 5th player in NHL history to record his first ever 50-goal season after turning 30 years old. The other 4 never hit more than 42 goals after that 50-goal season. It's for people interested, it's Joe Mullen, Johnny Busick, Jean Pronovost, and Vic Hadfield. When Vic Hadfield hit his 50-goal season, the highest number of goals he had in a season after that was 32. So can we realistically expect Kreider to hit 50 again? I don't think so.
Nope. No.
And
Nick, did you want to say something? It looked like you wanted to say something. Or were you just...
Oh, me? No, I'm watching the World Series right now.
Oh, gotcha.
Who's winning?
Astros 5-0.
Oh, okay. So they're probably gonna tie it up then. Wait, the Phillies won last night, right?
Yeah, they were down 5-0 too.
Oh, nice. I don't know much about baseball other than Aaron just rules and the Astros suck.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But my fiance is a Yankees fan, so what do I know? No, but look, having one player hit his career numbers is one thing, but having 5 do it in the same year, yeah, you have to capitalize on that. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but it shouldn't be the expectation.
Yeah, it can't be. It can't. Jesse then says, "What are your guys' thoughts on Kravtsov and all of his injuries?" For today, I'm not even mad about it. Like the injury that he had against who was it before? I don't know. Was it Colorado?
He had an
Right?
injury against Tampa where Hedman pushed him against the boards. Then he
That
had
I'm
an
not mad
injury.
about. The Colorado one, I think, was the only one where it's like that one looked like it was a little nothing. But today, I can't fault him. I mean, you saw
I
the guy
will.
bleeding.
I will say this, and actually, I know Jesse because I attended the World Juniors in Vancouver with him. And I think the draft too, when Kaka was picked. I don't know. I think so. Look, I don't worry about injuries unless they are recurring in the same area. If you have 2 concussions, that's concerning. If you break the same ankle twice, that's concerning. But right now, Kravtsov had a lower back injury in game 1, a shoulder injury in what was it, game 5? And now a potential concussion in game 9. I don't think I would consider that injury prone.
Yeah, no.
As long as you don't aggravate a previous injury, I'm not too worried.
Yeah. I'm not too worried either. I just feel more bad for the guy than anything
Oh
that
no,
he can't
I
stay
mean
healthy
me
here.
too. Look, last year he should have made the team and he didn't. This year he shouldn't have made the team and he did. And then he gets 3 injuries in the first 9 games. Man, that's tough luck. But hopefully he can bounce back from this.
Yeah, hopefully. Just feel bad. Gotta feel bad. And Mike says Othman next season is what I'm guessing. Yeah, Othman will probably be here next season. I mean,
Yeah.
90% chance at
I met
least.
Altman in September. We had lunch together. We talked. It was pretty fun. I spoke to him about going back to juniors, and he seemed very understanding of the situation. And we talked about players that had previously been sent back to juniors in their second post draft year. We're talking about Claude Giroux, Corey Perry, Jeff Carter, Tyler Toffoli, Matt Barzal, Logan Couture, Mark Scheifele. And when we went over those names, I said, listen, all these guys went back to juniors for a second year. So just go back, just play your heart out, do what you want to do what makes you better as a player, and then come back next year and earn a spot. And I think he's going to. He has a good head. He has really good support from his family. His uncle and his dad played professional hockey in Switzerland, so they know kind of what the expectation is of pro hockey. Even though it's not the NHL, it's still pro hockey. So yeah, I think he's gonna be making the team next year. Whether that's left wing or right wing, we'll see. But he can play both sides.
Yeah, and I thought he even played good enough in the preseason where he maybe
Oh,
could have
that
cracked it.
that first preseason game, he had the power play assist on the VZ goal, and then the shorthanded assist on the Miller goal. That was a really good game by Othman. I think he had the first star of that game against the Islanders. He was really good. The problem for Othman is that the Rangers didn't have a spot for him.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the preseason is not just about performance; it's also about contract situation. Like we saw with Kravtsov. Kravtsov didn't make the team last year over Gauthier and Hunt when he should have. And this year he did when in reality, if you're being really honest, Jimmy Vesey and Brendan Othman outplayed Kravtsov in preseason.
Agree. And I wonder if VC didn't have the preseason that he had, if Othman would have got that 9-game sample. I really wonder that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. Interesting thing to think about. But here's the thing: the Flint Firebirds play their last game on March 25th. After that, the Rangers have 8 regular season games left, and I think this played into their decision. if the Flint Firebirds are eliminated in the regular season, they can call him up and play him for 8 games before the playoffs even start, just to give him a taste. And then they can determine, do we want to keep him on the team or do we tell him to go home and prepare for next season? By not playing him in October, they give themselves a little bit more freedom in April, if that makes sense.
I agree. And if you want to talk about a in-house deadline acquisition, if you will, that could be the spark plug. And it
Do
would be
people
great to see him
remember
come over.
Kreider in 2012?
Yep.
That's what you're talking about. You're talking about a guy that you call up from the minors, or in Kreider's case, you sign him from college. But you already have this guy on your in your system, and then you add him to the team. To me, that's a better deadline acquisition than most of the players you'll find in March.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And the best part about it is doesn't cost you assets. That would be the best case scenario.
You can keep your first round picks.
Yep. That would be the best. Thank you for the $2 dono. Greetings from Canes country. I hate the Rangers, but I love your content. Thank you so much for the kind words there. Appreciate.
Why does they hate the
donation
Rangers?
there. You're gonna have to answer that because I don't know. But thank you so much again for the $2 dono. Really do appreciate that. Freak Bleach says Athanasiu and got the spare is what I want to see at the deadline.
See, Athanasiu is a player that's interesting to look at because he brings the same kind of pace and kind of game-breaking talent that Gauthier has. If only Gauthier had the finishing ability of Athanasiu. I mean, Athanasiu is not much, but still better than Gauthier. Over the last couple of years, I've said multiple times that the secret to success is pace. The Colorado Avalanche with Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, Gabriel Landeskog. Yeah, it's quality, it's talent, but it's also pace, especially MacKinnon. And Makar is a really good skater. They have Bowen Byram, who's a really good skater on defense. The Colorado Avalanche have a second power play unit with 3 defensemen. That's stuff that you only see in video games. That's the key to success. If we can find a guy that has Gauthier speed with a little bit better finishing ability, then we're golden. I don't know if Athanasiu is that guy, but it's interesting to see that name brought up.
That is an interesting name. I wonder if they explore. There's another guy on Chicago, not Kane. Domi is another name that I feel like they might go look at as well to acquire at the deadline, because I know they've had interest in the past, so that could be another name. Yeah. So they have options there. Maybe Gauthier will take advantage of his playing time.
This is actually a really good point and something I want to touch on. Gauthier went back to Hartford for, 3 weeks now? Yep. When he was in Hartford, he played really well. He scored some goals. It's like he capitalized on the time and space that he got. And he was able to improve his skill set. And I'm not saying that that's the reason why he scored tonight, but it's interesting to see a player. How old is he now? 24?
24 or 25. I could check on that.
It's 25. Interesting to see a player that's 25 years old and potentially still improve on basic skill sets. But let's also not forget that Matt Zuccarello did not become an NHL regular until he was 26.
True.
Matt Zuccarello was up and down between Hartford and New York until 2013. So, and he was born in '87. So he was 26 when he became a regular. So,
yeah, it just shows that if he keeps putting the work in, anything could happen, and he could be a mainstay, which that would be huge if the Rangers could get another guy like that. If you just find little production, or maybe you get something significant somehow from in-house.
Also, when it comes to Kakko and Lafreniere, Henrik Sedin did not hit 50 points in a single season until he was 25. Daniel Sedin was 24. Andrew Ladd was 24. Nino Niederreiter was 23, I think. Van Riemsdyk was 24. Sam Reinhart was 24. All these are top 5 picks. So make of that what you will.
Yeah, just shows that situations or just anything could happen. So
Mhm.
have to be patient. Have to be patient. Othman will be really nice next year with the cap situation. Completely agree. Although I really wonder how much the cap's going to go up. That's a different conversation there. But hopefully it goes up
We
more
we
than a
do have
million.
3.4 million coming off the books in cap penalties, though.
Yeah, which that's huge. Thank God finally.
Yeah.
Which
It'll be the
that stung
first
this
time.
off season.
It'll be the first time since 2017 we don't have any cap penalties on the books.
Yeah, and hopefully there's no buyout this offseason. I
Mhm.
mean, I can't imagine any.
And
So
I think the last time the Rangers had no buyouts at all on the books was 2009, because they had the Richards buyout, which was a compliance buyout, and the Wade Redden one. They don't count against the cap, but it still costs you money. Like Brad Richards getting paid 1.1 million until 2026.
yeah, 2009.
Yeah, and they bought him
Jeez.
out in 2014, I think. So that's 12 years of buyouts.
It's crazy to think that he could have been on the team very recently still had he not been bought out. Although he probably would have ended up being on LTIR and not playing
He won a
towards the
cup
end,
with
maybe.
Chicago in 2015, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, he won a cup with them.
Yeah. Oh.
Mike says Othman should play games as center. I don't know if he has that ability. Steven, do you have info on that?
When I spoke to him for my prospect interview in June, he did mention that he used to play center until he was 15. He played for the Don Mills Flyers in the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League, but then Shane Wright joined his team and he played center, so he was moved to the left wing. So he has a little bit of experience, but look, I don't think the Rangers should move a winger to center, especially right and now. The Rangers center situation is fine. You have
Agree.
Zibanejad for 8 years. You have Trocheck for 7. Do you really need Othman to convert to a center? No.
No, I have far more concerns on the wing, especially the right side. And you're hoping that you could end up keeping this offseason as your
Yeah.
third line center, which if you have
Mhm.
that 1, 2, 3 down the middle, I'm very satisfied. But
Yeah.
I did want to get to this because I forgot to. Should the Rangers keep Jones and Trouba together and then Miller and Schneider together, or should Gallant go back to what they had before? Since we saw this at the end of the game and I felt that it worked.
Oh, I was going to ask, is this correct? But this was at the end of the game. All right.
Yes. So should they keep it together or should they change it back up?
See, I want to see Miller Fox.
That's what I want to see too. I'm with you.
I want to see Miller Fox, and then I would play Lindgren with Trouba to give Trouba a defensively responsible partner. And that would
Agree.
leave us still with Jones Schneider. I think Jones Schneider is fine. I think Ranger fans get too hung up in the Jones Schneider pairing. If you look around the league, there's not a team in the league that has a third pairing that is without its controversies.
Yeah.
Every team in the league has a sixth defenseman that they would rather replace. My fiance's brother brought this up many times, but Ranger fans complain about Hayek as a seventh defenseman. Do you know who the other 7 defensemen are in the league? They're
Fair
not
point.
as good as Hayek.
And it's not like they're
And
trotting Nemeth out there this year.
look, Nemeth was a healthy scratch for the Arizona Coyotes to start the season. I don't think Hayek is the worst 7th defenseman in the league. I don't think Jones is the worst 6th defenseman in the league. Are they going to make mistakes? Sure, of course, but that's part of the growing pain.
Yeah, you got to let them.
Yeah, McDonough wasn't a star from day one.
Nope. None of these guys were.
So give them a chance. Let them play the way they want to play.
Yeah, I agree with that. Nick, what do you think about the defensive pairings?
Honestly, I'm not even sure, to be honest with you. I think you just got to figure out what works and just run with it, because right now we're And well, we just broke our losing streak, but we just got to get back to our winning way. So whatever works, just run with. That's all I could say.
Well, I wouldn't say McDonough sucked, but before he became a first pair defenseman, he was playing with Michael Sauer. And I would say the McDonough situation back then is very similar to the Miller situation right now. Everyone wants to keep Lindgren and Fox together, but realistically, if Miller forces his way onto the top pair, you make that switch.
Agree with that completely, and I think it balances things out more too. I mean, I'd be fine with these defensive pairings too that they tried at the end of the game. I'm open to a switch. I feel like Trouba and Miller, it's time though that they get split apart. I don't think that it works out. I don't, and I like the switch, and I'm hoping that they keep something similar or they throw Miller on the top pair like we mentioned. And for is the cap going up 4 million?
If that's a big if
Yeah.
the NHL pays off their remaining debt, the cap can go up to 4 million.
Yeah. So we just gotta pray. We gotta pray.
Yeah, it's not a given yet, but if it does happen, that is a game changer for the Rangers because they have to sign Lafreniere and Miller.
Yep. And Hedel.
Yeah, and Hedel too. Yeah.
Those are pretty significant names. And if Jones steps it up a bit and proves to be an everyday guy, that's another name you're gonna have to pay. They got a couple names. Here. So that is going to be interesting to keep an eye on. Yep, if you add the 4 million cap raise to our 3 million coming off the cap penalties from buyouts, that's a damn good amount of money. Yep. Game changing.
Yeah.
And yeah, the center depth is fine. Completely agree. Having Jones with Trouba would be nice because it means less Trouba shots, ideally. Trouba shots.
Yeah, I think Trouba reaching his 30s, I hope he switches to a more conservative role on defense where he plays more of a defensive role.
I think he needs to either way.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
hopefully
he's slow on the back check to begin with, and he's got to play more of a defensive game.
Yeah.
Because it's not like he's putting up that many points either. Granted, I know that last year he did put up, considering he didn't get power play minutes, a solid amount of points, but I still think he should be defensively responsible.
We are talking about a season where all of our top players had career years. And
exactly.
That trickles down to guys like Trouba and Miller and, So.
Yep. I still want Gauthier being what we expected when we got him. Yeah, that'd be nice. I mean, when we got him, I wasn't expecting him to be some star for us, but definitely more. And if he could prove how he's been playing over the past few games, it's going to be impossible for the coaching staff to sit him. That's for sure.
If Gauthier can put up 15 goals, 15 assists, I think I'm going to be really happy.
Yeah, 35 points from him. That would be a solid player right there in your lineup. Yeah. That's great production for a bottom six winger, 100%.
Yeah. And I think with Gauthier, what really stands out is how many penalties he draws.
That too. Yeah, that I like a lot about his game.
Yeah.
And if the power play could continue to click like it did today, that changes it. That's game-changing stuff there. You get more penalties, get more power plays. That would be nice to see. But do either of you have anything that you want to add before we end the episode, since we're over an hour here? All right.
No.
No, really? No, all good.
All good. All right. So that's
just gotta get on a winning streak here. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to start with one, right?
Yeah. So, there you go.
Yeah. And we play the Coyotes tomorrow in their shitty college arena.
Yeah.
Knowing our luck, we'll probably.
Honestly, the arena's not shitty. It's just our locker room. It's terrible.
I think it's
will only come out with a point.
Yeah.
Hopefully. What do you guys want from the Rangers in these next 3 games? Since we'll end up recording next Saturday. What are you expecting here over this 3-game stretch?
So it's Coyotes, Flyers, and
Boston.
then Bruins. 2 wins out of the 3. I expect them to beat the Coyotes and the Flyers, even though Carter Hart is on a really good start so far. The Bruins concern me a little bit because the Bruins have, even though they don't have the depth, they still have the top line with Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak, and then Taylor Hall on their second line. So that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, and they've been playing good. I'm with you there. I expect 2 wins. I think you got to win. You definitely have to win tomorrow in
Yeah.
Arizona. I don't think that's
Yeah.
a question.
If you get 2 wins and take Boston to overtime, I'd be happy.
Yeah, if you could go 2-0-1, get a point streak going, that would be really ideal here
Yeah.
to get things going.
By the
Nick,
way,
what do you expect?
despite the issues we've had so far, Shesterkin hasn't lost a game in regulation yet.
So there you go. As long as he's starting against Boston, we should be in a prime spot. Nick, what do you expect over the next 3 games?
Honestly, I just want to see us play quality hockey on both sides of the puck, and I think if we do that, I think the wins will take care of itself.
Yeah.
But I think in our current situation, I think we just gotta, just play solid hockey all around.
Yeah. The thing I want to see is more creativity on the power play. I think we are too static.
Yeah, completely agree. They need to switch things up, and they did a bit more today. You saw more
Yeah.
opportunities from Trocheck in the
That
bumper spot.
that
which I
first
like.
Trocheck goal on the power play, even though he didn't get an assist, that was because of what Kako did.
Yeah, I personally think that's another thing that I will mention quickly too. I think that they should put Kako on the first unit and move Panarin to the second unit to balance things out.
See, I would move Trocheck to the second unit because it gives you a really good center that can win a face-off.
That's another good point there. Yeah, I'd be fine with. I'd be open to either
Yeah.
change there. I think that they should try to switch something up here to get things clicking more. And
And
would
then
be nice
on the
for second
power
unit
play,
to be
on the
effective.
first power play unit, you put Kako on the right, Zibanejad on the left. Kreider is the net front presence, and then just play Fox and Panarin on the blue line.
Yeah. Especially
Yeah.
because the amount of shorthanded chances they've been giving up lately. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah. So that's going to be where we end things. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. If you're watching the YouTube version, leave a like and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, give a review, rating, all of that good stuff. Thank you guys so much. And we will see you guys next Saturday for the next episode. Let's go, Rangers.